Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We have a lot to cover this week, including the debut of Ballerina, the John Wick spinoff that didn't exactly set the world on fire, as well as a ton of updates for other movies inside the top 10. So let's get right into it and look at the box office top 10 for the weekend of June 6th through the 8th. At number one for a third consecutive week was Lilo and Stitch, which brought in $32.3 million, a 47.6% drop. That's better than its week two drop. It's now made $335 million domestically. From the world of John Wick, Ballerina, or just Ballerina, debuted in second place at a lower than anticipated $24.5 million. Despite some positive reviews, it's a movie that I liked quite a bit. It just couldn't quite catch on fire with audiences. In third place was Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which dropped 45.5% in week number 3. It brought in $14.8 million and is now at almost $150 million worldwide. The big concern with that film is the cost, and we're going to break that down in just a few minutes. Karate Kid Legends dropped 57.8%, which is a little steeper than you might expect from a movie that's kind of a 4-quadrant film, didn't have a huge debut, so it looked like there may be some waning audience enthusiasm there. It brought in $8.5 million for a $35 million domestic total thus far. Final Destination Bloodlines continues to hold well in its fourth weekend of release. It dropped 40.8% and brought in around $6.4 million. It's now at $123.5 million and is cementing itself even further in the summer top 10. If it stays there, that is going to be a miss from me because I did not listen to my instincts and put it in my personal predictions for the summer top 10. The Phoenician Scheme, the latest from Wes Anderson, opened in wide release this past weekend and jumped around 1,000% for a $6.2 million opening. Its domestic total now is over $7 million, and I'm going to look at Wes Anderson's career at the box office here in a little bit. Bring Her Back dropped 50.2%, which is pretty good for a horror film. It made $3.5 million. Its domestic total now at just over $14 million. Don to Don Evil Eye, the preview experience for the second season of the popular anime, brought in $3.1 million in 8th place. Sinners spent an 8th week in the domestic top 10. It dropped 46.4% and brought in $2.8 million. Its domestic total now at $272.5 million. And Thunderbolts is on the cusp of dropping out of the top 10. It dropped 49.5%, brought in $2.4 million, and is currently at $186 million. Not a banner day for the MCU, despite a recovery as far as critical and public reaction. Dropping out of the top 10 this past weekend, we had Friendship, which was out after 3 weeks, The Last Rodeo out after 2 weeks, and J-Hope Tour, Hope on the Stage, which was a special event, out after 1 week in the top 10. And I mentioned Sinners spending 8 weeks in the domestic top 10. That ties it for the longest run of any movie released in 2025. It's up there now with Captain America: Brave New World, a Minecraft movie, and Dog Man. And it's now 1 week up on One of Them Days, which spent 7 weeks in the top 10. If it can hang on next weekend, and I think that might be a tall order, but it has held very well so far, it will set the mark for 2025 with 9 weeks in the domestic top 10. Looking at the biggest theater count changes this past weekend, the Phoenician Scheme leads the way by adding 1,672 theaters. The Last Rodeo lost 760 theaters. It's still in 1,235. Sinners also lost a bunch of theaters. That could be its biggest barrier to perhaps staying in the top 10 for another week. 620 theaters gone. It's now in 1,518. Thunderbolts lost 565 theaters. It's now in 1,955. And a Minecraft movie is wrapping up its domestic release. It lost 478 theaters. It's now in just 346. This is what I like to call our road to recovery. The blue line is the box office weekend average for 2015 to 2019. The red line is 2021 to 2024. And the dotted black line is every weekend so far this year. And after a pretty decent winning streak, we dipped down below not just where we were pre-COVID, but where we have been over the last few years. I don't think a whole lot of studios and theater managers are going to complain because it has been a pretty good run over the last 5 or 6 weeks, but we don't want to stay down there for too long, and we'll see if How to Train Your Dragon can boost that line definitely above the red, but even potentially, I don't know, we'll see above that blue line this upcoming weekend. So I wanted to talk about a lot of movies that are in the top 10, and we'll start with the number one movie at the box office right now, which is Lilo and Stitch. When we look at the domestic grosses for Disney's live-action animated remakes, Lilo and Stitch moves into fifth place ahead of The Little Mermaid. It's at $335.6 million. It's about $20 million behind Aladdin, about $30 million behind The Jungle Book. And then there's a big leap that I don't think it's going to take for it to get up there where Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King are. But I think it's got a really good shot at being number 3 on this animated remake list. And when we look at the race for the number one domestic movie of the year, in red there, you'll see Lilo and Stitch. The movie in blue is a Minecraft movie, and you can see that they've kind of been switching places. A Minecraft movie got off to a bit of a better start over its first 3 days, but Lilo and Stitch pulled ahead on Memorial Day and over the next week or so. But as you can see, over this past weekend, a Minecraft movie opened a lead up again over Lilo and Stitch. It's not a big lead, but I think it is going to be a very close race if you're just looking at these two movies, or it's possible that another movie shoots up and passes both of them before Lilo and Stitch is all said and done. But I think what you're seeing is a bit of fading from Lilo and Stitch. It did not have a chicken jockey type reaction that was sending people back into theaters, and it's losing a little bit of steam versus Minecraft, but let's be honest, they're both really successful films. This is the John Wick franchise. When we look at domestic openings, there have been 5 films in the franchise now, and you can see that Ballerina is the 4th best opening in franchise history. It's about $10 million ahead of the opening of the original John Wick back in 2014. It's about $6 million behind the opening of John Wick Chapter 2, and then very much behind John Wick Chapter 3 and John Wick Chapter 4. Prior to this, every successive John Wick movie opened better than the movie that came before it. When you adjust for inflation, Ballerina stays in 4th place. It's about $5 million ahead of the first John Wick adjusted for inflation, but about $15 million behind John Wick Chapter 2. John Wick Chapter 4 still has the best opening in franchise history. It's $77.7 million adjusted for inflation, about $6.5 million ahead of John Wick Chapter 3. And then if we're looking at the franchise grosses domestically, of course, Ballerina is in last place right now because it's only been out for 3 days, or we're only counting 3 days of box office numbers. It's about $19 million behind the first John Wick. I think it's got a great shot at being number 4 on this list, but it doesn't look like it's going to join John Wick Chapter 2, 3, or 4. And then when you adjust for inflation, it's got about $35 million to catch up with the first John Wick. And that'll be a bigger question. Can Ballerina pull in over $58.3 million to pass John Wick, the original, on the adjusted for inflation list? Mission Impossible has kind of been treading water behind Lilo and Stitch and some other movies over the last few weeks. So let's drill down a little bit more into its numbers thus far. I looked at this chart last week, which is the performance of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning versus Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. And at the end of the second weekend of release, we could see that The Final Reckoning was pulling ahead a little bit of what Dead Reckoning was doing at that same time in its release cycle. And over the last few days, that gap has widened just a little bit. So now The Final Reckoning is trending more ahead of Dead Reckoning, although it's not a massive number, not what I would call a substantial number. But what we are seeing perhaps is the effect of Barbenheimer on the last movie. This could be the depressed turnout that many people said was happening because it lost so many premium screens to Oppenheimer and to Barbie. Now, I believe The Final Reckoning is losing a lot of those premium screens this upcoming weekend, so I'm going to track this trend and see if it continues to outperform Dead Reckoning and if that gap continues to grow. When we look at the franchise tracker for Mission Impossible, domestically, The Final Reckoning has now moved ahead of Mission Impossible 3, and it's about $23 million behind Dead Reckoning Part 1, so it should get to that point. It might pass the gross of the original Mission Impossible, may get to where Rogue Nation is, and then really it becomes about breaking that $200 million barrier. This has not been traditionally a franchise that produces massive domestic grosses, which I think is one of the problems with the budgets increasing as much as they have over the years. As you can see, Fallout, which is the highest grossing Mission Impossible film domestically, topped out at $220 $1 million. When you adjust for inflation, The Final Reckoning is still last in the series, about $32 million behind Dead Reckoning Part 1. And really, this is where you see the diminishing returns, I guess you could call it, between the first and second Mission Impossible films and the rest. Mission Impossible 2, back in the year 2000, made just over $400 million adjusted for inflation. The first Mission Impossible was at about $370 million, but Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible Fallout, Rogue Nation, those have all gotten closer to the $300 million mark, but have not passed it. Mission Impossible 3 made about $212 million adjusted for inflation, and Dead Reckoning Part 1 came in below that even at 181.7. So these last two films really have lost steam, even against the somewhat modest box office expectations of the previous films, but the budgets on these movies have been very high. It was very high for Dead Reckoning Part 1, or just Dead Reckoning, and even higher, reportedly, for The Final Reckoning. So let's see where it stands from a box office profitability standpoint. Again, this does not count other revenue streams or income other than box office ticket sales. And the budget really is the key factor here. Multiple reports have put the budget at $400 million. Multiple reports have put the marketing budget at $150 million. That gives it a cost of $650 million. It would basically need to gross close to $1 billion to turn a profit in the theatrical window, and it hasn't come anywhere near. Right now, it's at $450 million worldwide. You can see the breakdowns there on the left-hand side of the screen as far as how much I'm estimating is coming back to the studio. Basically, I have it bringing in about $198 million in net income thus far, but against costs of $650 million, that means it's about $450 million outside of the profitability window in theatrical ticket sales. Now, yes, it is going to make revenue from other sources, but I feel like Tom Cruise has a lot of goodwill because he is so passionate about promoting his films and promoting the theatrical experience that maybe people don't want to talk about it or don't want to feel like they're dunking on him. But this is turning out to be a fairly substantial financial disappointment. Even though it is a movie that the critics liked but maybe didn't love, and I think it is a very impressive film in many ways, it just doesn't justify the costs. Yes, some of those were unavoidable due to delays for various reasons, but I think that some of them were due to the scale and the scope of the film and how Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise wanted to make it. The Mission Impossible franchise, though, has just never supported a budget that high, and we are looking at what might be the biggest money loser of the series thus far. Entering the top 10 charts this week was the latest film from Wes Anderson, so I made some what I thought were appropriate Wes Anderson graphics to look at some of his stats when it comes to the box office. First of all, these are the top grossing weekends for each Wes Anderson movie. Now, this is not necessarily the opening weekend for each film, but this is the weekend that they made the most money, and that's because these films usually open in limited release or they roll out very slowly. And The Phoenician Scheme comes in 5th place at $6.2 million. It's behind Fantastic Mr. Fox's highest grossing weekend, which was at $6.9 million in late November of 2009. The Royal Tenenbaums back in 2002 made $8.5 million on its highest grossing weekend. Then we had Grand Budapest Hotel in 2014 at $8.5 million. And actually Asteroid City, Wes Anderson's last theatrical feature film, had his highest grossing individual weekend for any of his movies at just over $9 million. So The Phoenician Scheme kind of falling in the middle there. But I think that this is very interesting. When you look at Wes Anderson's grosses domestically, Asteroid City had the highest individual weekend, but it was only his 5th highest grossing film domestically, which means that there was some fall off over time. A lot of interest, a big surge when it opened wide, and then a big fall off. And I'll be curious to see if The Phoenician Scheme follows that same pattern. When you don't adjust for inflation, The Grand Budapest Hotel is Anderson's highest grossing film, followed by The Royal Tenenbaums, Moonrise Kingdom, Isle of Dogs, and then Asteroid City in 5th place. But when you do adjust for inflation, The Royal Tenenbaums is easily Anderson's highest grossing film domestically at $94.8 million adjusted. The Grand Budapest Hotel is at $80 million, with Moonrise Kingdom at $63.5 million, Isle of Dogs at $40.9 million, and The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou at $40.7 million. I was also happy to see Rushmore so high up this list at $33.6 million in 6th place. Now, I cannot think of a director that probably cares less about the box office than Wes Anderson. It just doesn't seem to be something that concerns him. He has a longtime producer that bankrolls his movies, so I don't think that financial concerns are a big deal for him. But there does seem to be some waning audience interest when it comes to his films. What does he do next? Maybe he stays doing the same thing that he does and just understands what the financial picture for his movies is going to be, or maybe he has another Grand Budapest or Royal Tenenbaums that can merge his sensibility with something that a few more people can sink their teeth into theatrically. I also wanted to give a quick update on Thunderbolts, which is now the 29th highest grossing MCU film of all time. It has passed Black Widow at $186.4 million, and the question now is, will it be able to make more than Captain America Brave New World, which crawled its way over the $200 million mark? If Thunderbolts does that, it will also be crawling its way over that mark. And when you look at the MCU adjusted for inflation, it's currently at number 34 all time, just above Eternals and just below the Incredible Hulk. So this is not a breakout movie for Marvel. They're just going to have to wait and hope that Fantastic Four does it later this summer. Now, opening this weekend, we have a few different films, but the banner film is the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon. The comments in my review of the movie are littered with people that just don't think that it's necessary. They don't understand the point of remaking How to Train Your Dragon in live action. And that actually inspired me to ask a question of the members here on the channel so that you can have your say on what animated film you think would actually be worthy of a live action remake. It seems like most of the ones that have been made, people don't think should have been remade. So what's an animated film that you think would benefit from a live action remake? You can leave your pick in the comments of the member poll, which is live now. If your pick is already in the comments, you can just give that an upvote. It makes things easier to count. The 5 picks with the most upvotes will be revealed here on the show next week. And just to make things a little bit harder, the none option, as in no animated film would be worthy of a live action remake, will not be counted. So if your instinct is just to say, well, no film should be remade, that will not be an option on the poll. And in last week's member poll, I asked what franchise you would like to see a Legends installment of, a la Karate Kid Legends. And the winner was Evil Dead with 18 votes, a pretty handy win there. In second place was James Bond with 12 votes, bringing in all of the different actors, I guess, that you can bring in that have played James Bond. Tied for third place are Jack Ryan and Star Trek with 10 votes apiece, although I would say that Star Trek 09 is kind of already a Legends installment of Star Trek. And in fifth place is the Rocky Creed franchise with 7 votes, although I would argue that Creed, and especially Creed 2, are the Legends installment of the Rocky Creed franchise, but I guess we could always do more. So those are the 5 franchises that the members here on the channel would love to see a Legends installment of. And if you want to vote in these member polls, as well as get some of my videos early, you can become a channel member right now. There's a link in the description below, or depending on how you're watching this video, you might be able to click a button. I'd love to have you here as part of the channel and to hear your voice in these polls, because there is rarely a week where I look at the answers and I'm not surprised in some way or another. I also wanted to make sure to include this week's Charts with Dan trivia question. Now, we have How to Train Your Dragon's live action remake opening this upcoming weekend. That, of course, is a film from DreamWorks Animation. We have a Pixar film opening later in June, Elio. So this week's question is, how many $100 million or more domestic opening weekends, that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, do Pixar and DreamWorks Animation have combined, not adjusted for inflation? So you take both animation studios, how many of their movies have had a first Friday, Saturday, Sunday weekend debut of $100 million or more? I'll give you a second to think about it. And the number was actually a little lower than I anticipated. The answer is 7. Incredibles 2, Inside Out 2, Finding Dory, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, Shrek the Third, and Shrek 2. I know that people say that they are sick and tired of sequels and they wish the studios stopped making them, but those are largely the movies that people are choosing to see. And of all of the Pixar and DreamWorks animated movies that have been made, 7 have opened to over $100 million, all of them sequels. We have so much more to break down, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsors for this week's show. This video is brought to you by Factor. Think about all the things that you love doing during the summer. My guess is that spending a lot of time indoors cooking isn't one of them. You want to maximize all that summer sunshine, and it just got a lot easier with Factor. They deliver chef-crafted meals right to your door that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. And we're not talking about a limited menu here. Every week, Factor offers 45 options that fit all of your goals, including choices like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Factor also provides great breakfast, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. This week, Factor has one of my favorite meals on the menu, a barbecue chicken breast with sweet potatoes. It's a meal that I probably wouldn't make for myself at home, but it's super easy to enjoy with Factor. And just the other day, I grabbed one of their green juices to start my day off right, and I'm planning to order some blueberry pancakes for one of those mornings where I want to start with something a little more substantial. Get started at factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Murrell50off at factormeals.com/Murrell50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Factormeals.com/Murrell50off. This video is brought to you by Mando. I don't know if you've ever experienced summer in the South, but it's like living inside a 95-degree wet sponge for about 3 months. The instant I step outside, I start sweating, and it's not unusual for me to go through 2 or 3 shirts a day if I want to do anything else but sit inside. That's why I'm super excited that Mando has launched the Mando Deodorant Plus Sweat Control Solid Stick. I already loved Mando as a deodorant. I use it every day, and I never have to worry about how I smell. But now it has clinical strength sweat control, 2 times better at controlling sweat than the standard. And it works on both sweat and odor for 72 hours. All you have to worry about is how much fun you're having outside, and not how big the sweat stains on your shirt are getting. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. And as a special offer for fans of the show, new customers get 20% off site-wide with my exclusive code. Use code DAN at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. That's shopmando.com. Please support the show and tell them that I sent you. Mando has you covered with deodorant plus sweat control, so you can say goodbye to sweat stains and say hello to long-lasting freshness. Let's turn our attention away now from the domestic box office and look at the top 5 films internationally outside of the US and Canada. And the top 2 movies remain the same. Lilo and Stitch brought in another $67.7 million. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning brought in another $40.6 million. In third place was Ballerina, which brought in $26 million. In fourth place was Houseful 5, which is a Hindi language comedy murder mystery from India that is the 5th in the Houseful series, which began back in 2010. It brought in $15.2 million, perhaps because, similar to the original theatrical release of Clue, there are 2 different versions of the movie with 2 different killers at the end, so some of that may have been repeat business to see both endings in theaters. In 5th place was Karate Kid Legends, which brought in another $12 million internationally. When you take those international numbers and you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get our top 5 films worldwide. And Lilo and Stitch had another $100 million weekend, $100.2 million, a 43.1% drop. It's now at $772.5 million worldwide. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning dropped 46.2%, brought in another $55.6 million worldwide, and is now at $450 million. Ballerina brought in $51 million worldwide on its opening weekend. Karate Kid Legends brings in another $18.7 million. Its worldwide total now at $47 million. And Houseful 5 in its opening weekend brought in $16.3 million worldwide. And when we look at the Disney animated film remake grosses at the worldwide box office, Lilo and Stitch has now moved up to the number 5 spot. It has passed Maleficent, which is now at number 6. And if it can make another $200 million or so, it will pass The Jungle Book for number 4 and be within striking distance of $1 billion. I think that it's going to be like a Minecraft movie, a bit of a close call as to whether Lilo and Stitch is going to get there, but it's certainly got the right trajectory to at least have it be a possibility. This is the Mission Impossible franchise by worldwide gross, and you can see that the Final Reckoning has moved past 2006's Mission Impossible 3 and is at $450.2 million. It's very close to passing the original Mission Impossible's gross at $457.9 million, and if it can make another $100 million, it will pass Mission Impossible 2. And I mentioned that the movie would have to have made around $1 billion to break even solely in the theatrical window. You can see by the number one movie there, Mission Impossible Fallout, that the highest gross for a Mission Impossible film worldwide was $786.6 million in the summer of 2018. It was a very different time globally at the box office. That was the most acclaimed, I think, at that time, Mission Impossible film. And even that movie couldn't quite crack the $800 million mark, which is why I still think they were really budgeting these films too high. It was a long shot for success anyway, but made even more so by the exorbitant production costs. I also want to look at the John Wick franchise worldwide, with Ballerina at $51 million. The original John Wick made $87.7 million worldwide. So Ballerina, I think, has a great shot of beating that and getting to that $100 million mark around the world. Of course, the production costs on that movie reportedly were around $90 million, perhaps a little bit more with the additional photography and everything else. So it has a bit of an uphill climb to break even theatrically, and it certainly is not going to get close to John Wick Chapter 2, and certainly not Chapters 3 and 4, which made $326.6 million and $447.3 million worldwide. Let's take a look now at what I like to call our specialty charts, as well as the summer box office chart and the 2025 yearly charts. And we will start with the per theater averages for this past weekend. At number one was The Life of Chuck, which brought in $14,000 in 16 theaters. The Life of Chuck won the Audience Award at the Toronto Film Festival last year, which is often a good sign as far as awards contention, etc. It's directed by Mike Flanagan. It's gotten some good advance buzz. $14,000 in 16 theaters is a respectable per theater average, but maybe not what I would expect from a movie that's had the kind of buzz this one has. So I think this could be a sign that Neon still has a lot of work to do if they're trying to sell this to a wider audience. It hits many, many, many more theaters this upcoming weekend. Lilo and Stitch is in second at $7,733 per theater. Ballerina is right behind at $7,187 per theater. Then we have a couple of very limited releases. In the Fire of War brought in $5,500 in one theater. This is based on an actual battle that the Maori fought against the New Zealand colonial government in 1864, and it's from Indigenous director Mike Jonathan. The stars of the film include Temuera Morrison and Cliff Curtis. And then in fifth place, bringing in $4,969 in one theater, we have another film about Indigenous people. It's a documentary about the people native to the Amazon in Brazil who are seeking to stop its destruction. These are the top grossing films in limited release, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer. At number one, we had Houseful 5, which brought in $1.1 million in 375 theaters. In second place was the 25th anniversary revival of Dogma, which played in 700 theaters and brought in just over $1 million. In third place, in an unknown number of theaters, was Thug Life, which brought in $474,000. Thug Life is a Tamil language action film from India starring Kamal Hassan. In fourth place is the Al Pacino Dan Stevens exorcist type film The Ritual, which was really just kind of dumped off in theaters, 563 of them. It brought in $329,000. And then in fifth place was the live stream theatrically of UFC 316, which played in 439 theaters. It brought in $265,000. This is the 2025 domestic summer box office so far. Lilo and Stitch remains easily number one at $335.6 million. Thunderbolts is currently in second place, followed by Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and Final Destination: Bloodlines. Those four movies are the only ones so far this summer that have broken the $100 million barrier. Karate Kid Legends is currently at number 5. Ballerina enters the chart at number 6 with its $24.5 million opening. That bumps Friendship down to number 7. Bring Her Back goes up one spot to number 8. And The Last Rodeo and Clown in a Cornfield both drop down 2 spots to numbers 9 and 10. Hurry Up Tomorrow drops off of the summer top 10 list. And when we look at my predictions for the summer versus the actual chart so far, Lilo and Stitch was my predicted number 1 movie of the summer. It'll be there for at least a little while, but How to Train Your Dragon, which opens this upcoming Friday, was my pick for number 2 this summer. I agree it was an ambitious pick. We'll see if it actually goes that high. And I also have two other picks opening in the month of June. F1, which I picked to be number 7 for the summer, and Elio, which I picked to be number 9. This is the 2025 annual domestic box office thus far, and a Minecraft movie's at number 1 with $423.5 million. Lilo and Stitch in second place, Sinners in third place, Captain America Brave New World in fourth place, Thunderbolts in fifth place, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning in sixth place, Final Destination Bloodlines in seventh place, Dogman is in eighth, Snow White is in ninth, and The Accountant 2 is in 10th. We'll see if How to Train Your Dragon can generate enough in its opening weekend to jump onto this list by the time we do the show next week. And these are the top 10 movies worldwide so far this year. Ne Zha 2, of course, at number 1. A Minecraft movie looks like it's going to top out around $960-ish million. Lilo and Stitch currently at number 3 at $772.5 million. Detective Chinatown 1900 is at number 4. Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning moves up 2 spots and is now the 5th highest grossing film of the year worldwide at $450.4 million. That bumps down 2 MCU films, Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts. Sinners is at number 8, Final Destination Bloodlines is at number 9, and Snow White is at number 10. So that's what's going on at the box office. Let's take a look now at the world of streaming, which is increasingly just as important a component in the world of entertainment as the box office returns. And we will start with the latest numbers from Netflix. This covers the week of May 26th to June 1st. And at number 1 on the chart was the Netflix original series Sirens, which brought in 18.23 million total views. In second place was A Widow's Game at 15.45 million views. This is a Netflix original movie from Spain about a woman suspected in her husband's death. Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders, a Netflix docuseries, comes in third place at 11.95 million views. Fear Street Prom Queen stays at number 4 with another 8.47 million views. Debuting at number 5 is The Heart Knows, a film from Argentina about a man with a heart transplant who falls in love with the widow of the man whose heart was donated to him. It brought in 7.56 million views. In sixth place is a series that I've actually heard some buzz for, Department Q. Its first week brought in 5.96 million total views. It's a detective show from the UK starring Matthew Goode, and Netflix is actually attempting to launch a late Emmy campaign for the show after hearing audience feedback. The Wild Robot makes its debut on the Netflix top 10 at 5.82 million views. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which is being brought over from Max. Warner Brothers does tend to license out a lot of their films to other services after a set period of time, comes in at 5.81 million views. Then we have the Netflix original movie Nonas and American Manhunt Osama bin Laden rounding out the top 10. And looking at the most watched movies released on Netflix in 2025, Nonas debuts on the list at number 8 with 49.32 million views. That knocks down I, Hostage and Despicable Me 4. And Exterritorial continues to move up the chart. It's now at number 3 with 80.23 million views, about 2 million behind the Life list, and it moves Havoc and Counterattack down to numbers 4 and 5. These are the most watched Netflix shows of 2025, and Sirens is now on the list at number 9. That knocks Cassandra off of the overall list. It's at 34.97 million total views. The Four Seasons is also moving up the chart. It's at 35.42 million views. That's good enough for number 7. Number 1, though, is Adolescence, of course, with 141.25 million views. And Adolescence has actually moved up to become the 4th most watched Netflix series since they started reporting numbers back in 2021. It's moved ahead of Stranger Things 4 for now, although I expect later this year that we will see a surge in viewers for Stranger Things 4 as people go back and watch the other seasons. But given how big a lot of these other shows are, it is very interesting to see a much smaller and more intimate show like Adolescence now cracking into the top 5. So those are the Netflix numbers. Let's look now at the numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are a little bit different. They're domestic numbers here in the US only. They don't cover the whole world like the Netflix numbers do. And they're delayed by about a month because that's how long it takes Nielsen to get those numbers to us. So this is covering the week of May 5th through the 11th, which was the debut week of Nonas on Netflix, and it was the most watched streaming movie across all streaming services at 12.7 million hours watched. Exterritorial is at number 2. Beetlejuice moved over to Netflix from Max and brought in 7.3 million hours watched. A Deadly American Marriage on Netflix debuts in 4th at 5.9 million hours watched. Another Simple Favor stays in the top 5. Paul is at number 6. Twilight, the original Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart film, returns to the chart at number 7 with 4.4 million hours watched. The animated film Home is at number 8. Havoc is at number 9, and Moana 2 on Disney Plus rounds out the top 10. And when we look at the most watched streaming movies so far this year, Havoc is now in that top 10 at number 9 with 27.9 million hours watched. And Despicable Me 4 moves up to number 2, although Moana 2 remains easily the most watched streaming movie so far this year at 98.15 million hours watched. These are the most watched streaming shows across all streaming platforms from May 5th through the 11th of this year. The Four Seasons is at number 1 with 19.28 million hours watched, with You in second place, Bluey in third place, Grey's Anatomy in fourth place, and in fifth place we have Andor with 13.83 million hours watched. Every single week this season, it has set a new series record for the highest viewership ever, and the next batch of numbers that we get from Nielsen will be for its finale week, so I'll be curious to see if it can continue that trend. The Last of Us is at number 6 with 12.3 million hours watched, NCIS is at 7, The Rookie's at 8, SpongeBob SquarePants is at number 9, and returning to the chart is Criminal Minds, which we often see on this top 10 chart, with 10.25 million hours watched. This is the Nielsen Top 20 when you look at it by watch time per available episode. So you take the hours watched for a particular show and divide it by the number of episodes available to watch, and it generates this number. At number 1 is The Four Seasons with 2.41 million hours watched per episode. The Eternaut comes in second place at 1 million hours watched per episode. It had just 6 episodes. Forever comes in third place. The Last of Us is in fourth place. Mobland is in fifth place at 764,000 hours per episode. Andor is at number 6, bringing in 658,000 hours per episode, followed by Poker Face, Ransom Canyon, You, and Black Mirror, rounding out the top 10. And those are all the numbers I have for you this week. Before I go, though, I just wanted to note a few things that you might want to look out for both at home and on streaming this week. First of all, on Wednesday, if you didn't see the live-action remake of Snow White in theaters, and the numbers say a lot of people didn't, then you can catch it on Disney Plus starting this Wednesday. On Thursday, in many theaters nationwide, Miley Cyrus will be releasing a movie tie-in to her album called Something Beautiful. It's a one-night-only event, so if you're a Miley Cyrus fan, you can catch that. And also debuting on Thursday is the second season of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Netflix show Fubar. Then on Friday, the big movie opening in theaters is How to Train Your Dragon. You can catch my review for that film right now here on the channel. Also expanding, it's a nationwide release. We have The Life of Chuck from director Mike Flanagan. We'll see if it is the crowd pleaser that many have hyped it up to be. And also opening this week is Materialists, which is being released by A24 and is the latest film written and directed by Celine Song. In limited release on Friday is a documentary called Prime Minister about former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. It won the Audience Award for World Documentary at the Sundance Film Festival. And debuting on Apple TV Plus on Friday is a new movie called Echo Valley. Julianne Moore plays a mother helping her daughter, played by Sydney Sweeney, deal with a traumatic event. Ridley Scott is one of the producers on this film. And finally on Sunday, if you haven't seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade on the big screen, now's your chance because it's being re-released nationwide through Fathom Events. And that's everything I've got for you this week. I know it was a lot of numbers, but this is the summer. It is the season of numbers. And be sure to stay tuned right here on the channel because there have been a couple of stories in the last day or so, including what seems to be the split now between Warner Brothers and Discovery that I want to dive deep into. So I plan on bringing you a video about that this week, as well as more movie reviews, and who knows what other news could break. So subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and if you want to become a member and weigh in on the member polls here on the show, that would be great as well. You can also check the description below for more info about the sponsors for this week's show, Factor and Mando. And of course, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Until next time, especially to my friends in Los Angeles right now, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.